Incredible map shows every country have been invaded by Britain except 20. An incredible map shows throughout history, Britain invaded the history of more than 170 countries over its history, which is equivalent to almost 90% of the world. According to the map, every country on earth have been invaded by Britain, with only 20 not having been. The empire began in the 16th century with trading posts in the Americas and Africa, but Britain's first colony was Ireland, when they resettled the land with English and Welsh Protestants. By the 19th century, it had spread across Asia and Australasia. It was the largest empire in history and the main global power, referred to as Pax Britannica. The British Empire's involvement in Africa began long before the formal notion of invasion as we understand it. Initial interactions were primarily through trade and unfortunately the transatlantic slave trade. However, the period known as Scramble for Africa saw a more aggressive expansion of European control over African territories. This era of heightened colonial activity by European powers spanned from 1881 to 1914, with the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 marking a significant moment where European countries convened to lay down rules for the division of Africa. The United Kingdom, along with other European powers, established a stronger presence in Africa during this time, with the aim of exploiting the continent's vast resources. By the early 20th century, the British Empire had established control over significant areas of the African continent, including Egypt, Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, and more. In 1912, the British Empire held sway over 412 million people, 23% of the global population at the time, and covered 14 million square miles, 24% of the earth. It caused Britain's political, legal, linguistic, and cultural identity to be forced across the globe into an empire on which the sun never sets. The empire began its descent after the Second World War. Over the next century, colonies across the world declared their independence, with Britain retaining sovereignty over 14 territories today. Many former colonies are now members of the Commonwealth, a collection of 15 nations with King Charles as head of state. Just 22 countries have not been invaded by Britain: Andorra, Belarus, Bolivia, Burundi, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Guatemala, Ivory Coast, and Kazakhstan. Also included are Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Mali, Marshall Islands, Monaco, Mongolia, Paraguay, Sao Tome and Principe, Sweden, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Vatican City. The map does not only show Britain's colonies, but all lands invaded by the country, which include France, Afghanistan, and Russia. The British Empire expanded its influence into what is now known as Nigeria during the 19th century. The annexation of Lagos occurred in 1861, marking the beginning of formal British presence in the region. Subsequently, the British influence grew over the Niger area, but it was not until 1885 that Britain effectively occupied the area, a move that was recognized by other European powers at the Berlin Conference. The Royal Niger Company, which was chartered and governed by George Tubman Goldie, ruled much of the country from 1886 to 1899. In the 20th century, the Southern Nigeria Protectorate and Northern Nigeria Protectorate were transferred from company control to the British Crown. The amalgamation of these territories into the Colony and Protectorate of Nigeria occurred in 1914 under the guidance of Governor Frederick Lugard, although the regions retained a degree of autonomy. This period of colonization lasted until Nigeria achieved its independence on October 1st, 1960. The British colonization of Nigeria had a profound impact on the nation's trajectory, with both positive and negative outcomes. On the positive side, the British introduced modern governance structures, replacing somewhat unstructured systems of kingdoms and empires with a more centralized administration. This included the introduction of modern ideas of government, improved healthcare, establishment of money currencies, infrastructural development, and increased literacy rates. However, the negative effects were significant and long-lasting. The imposition of colonial rule led to constant war and conflict, economic dependence, and resource exploitation. There was a loss of indigenous culture and identity, as well as land. The slave trade and the humiliation associated with it left deep scars on the societal psyche. Economically, the colonial administration reoriented the Nigerian economy for the benefit of the British Empire, focusing on the extraction and exploitation of raw materials while neglecting the development of local industries. This created an economic structure that was dependent on foreign markets and vulnerable to global price fluctuations. Socially, the colonial era saw the introduction of new social hierarchies and the disruption of existing ones. The British favored some ethnic groups over others, exacerbating ethnic tensions that have persisted into the present day. The education system and Christian missionary activities also contributed to the erosion of traditional cultural practices and languages. Politically, the colonial government's policies of indirect rule fostered divisions among different ethnic groups, as some local leaders were given preferential treatment over others. This policy of divide and rule had lasting implications for Nigeria's post-independence political stability and unity. The legacy of colonialism in Nigeria is complex, with the country still grappling with the consequences of that era. While it laid the foundations for modern statehood, it also sowed the seeds of division and underdevelopment that continue to affect Nigeria's socio-political and economic landscape. Understanding this legacy is crucial for addressing the challenges that Nigeria faces today.